The Buffalo Bills, one of the more polarizing teams in the NFL. They have an interesting time here throughout their history. From winning back-to-back AFL championships in the mid-60s to having one of the best running backs in the game with OJ. The Buffalo Bills managed to show some kind of success for just about every era for the most part. From the early success in the 60s and the 70s to the 80s where they were playoff contenders to the 90s where they went to 4 straight Super Bowls and losing every single one of them in incredible fashion. To even today where they're considered one of the best teams in the West and could win it all. Maybe. And with that success for the team, it has just as many great players to come along the way. But who are the best? In today's segment, we are going to find out. Today, I bring you the Buffalo Bills all-time theme team. Yes, sir. We are back with it. One of my personal favorite series on the channel so far, and I haven't made one of these in like 6 months. And for those waiting, I'm sorry for keeping you all waiting, but I want to get back into making more stuff like this and my versus stuff as well, because those are my favorites to make. The last couple of videos I did enjoy doing, but not nearly on the level with these, and it feels good doing this again. For this upcoming months, I will be making a massive effort to pump out these videos as much as possible, along with other ideas I have, but you guys will see that later on, but it's coming. Anyways, I just wanted to say thank you all for sticking by me, even though I have not been consistent at all. I'm currently working on that right now. But for the people who have been staying supportive and have been much appreciated, and thank you. I will be reverting back to form by doing rankings, top 10s, all-time videos, and so much more. So if you have not already considered subscribing to the channel, I did receive many requests to do different recommended teams, but I'm not sure if I want to stay in alphabetical order or just do, one based off a request, but I'll have to wait and see, and we can probably make that work. Anyways, thank you all, and let's get it. Before we start on the team, a little breakdown for those who are new when it comes to these themed teams. I like to gather the best players from any given NFL team and use their best players throughout their history at each position and make the best team possible. I have also done 2 other teams as of this recording, and I'll have a playlist in the card on the top right of your screen and in the description below, so as well you can check them out. But anyways, let's begin. We will first start off with the offense, and the captain of the offense being the quarterback position. Starting quarterback will go to Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly is known as one of the most accurate quarterbacks of his generation. What made Jim Kelly special was how much success he had during his 10 years in Buffalo. Out of those 10 years, he had 7 years where he had a winning season with the team. He also went to 4 back-to-back Super Bowls. Now, yes, he did lose every single one, but he was a missed kick away from having at least one though. Thanks, Norwood. But even getting to 4 straight Super Bowls is extremely difficult to do, as Kelly's Bills were the only ones to do it up to this point. Although having many great pieces around him, he was arguably one of the best on his team during that time. A 5-time Pro Bowler and a 1-time All-Pro, the Hall of Famer was a no-brainer for this spot. The second quarterback spot will go to Josh Allen. Okay, so as of right now, Josh Allen is only in his 4th season, but he has proved himself to be one of the NFL's finest right now. His current Buffalo record is 31-16, which means he wins a lot. Now, granted, a lot of that success was also because of some great pieces around him, but Josh Allen has been putting in some work, especially in his 2020 year, where he threw for 37 touchdowns and just 10 interceptions. This, along with his mobility, has made him a deadly dual threat. Though I'm not 100% sure about making him a Hall of Fame case, but if he is this good for the next 10 years down the line, I'm actually willing to gamble and comfortably say that he is the real deal. No other quarterback is really worth mentioning here at the quarterback position, so there will be no third string. So let's just get to the running backs. On to the second part of the offense. The Bills are actually pretty stacked with this selection of running backs, so here we will have 3 on this team. Starting running back will go to OJ Simpson. The Juice is known as one of the best running backs in NFL history, with over 11,000 rushing yards and 6 Pro Bowls and 5 All-Pros. The 1973 MVP managed to hit a milestone that is almost impossible for running backs, which is rushing for 2,000 yards, which he did in 1973. That same year he won the MVP. It was honestly a toss-up between him and the second second back I put on this team, but honestly, you can make these two interchangeable, as you will see in a minute. But let's move on to running back number 2, and this will be Thurman Thomas. The all-time Bills leading rusher is one of the most versatile running backs in NFL history, and certainly the most versatile running back in franchise history. Thomas's ability to catch the football was nothing short of incredible, and although he had pretty good stats from just running the football alone, he shines in his total yards per scrimmage. During his best years in Buffalo, he has averaged a 68% catch rate, 1,973 total yards per season as an average, and over 1,300 yards rushing during his season average. His versatility alone can make a case for the number 1 spot on this team, but in the end I picked O.J. Simpson. The third running back on this team will go to Fred Jackson. Jackson was another great receiving back from the Bills from 2007 to 2014. Out of those 8 seasons with the Bills, he managed to get 1,000 or more total scrimmage yards in 5 of those 8 seasons. Taylor is also third in all-time receiving yards as well, with the highest catch rate out of the 3 backs with a 73%. A good third option and a slot or a flat back could work for him on this team as well. Alright, so here are the backs. Overall, we have a great workhorse running back with O.J. Simpson and Thurman Thomas being either a second option or a receiving option in the slot, and the same can be said with Fred Jackson. Unlike the other 2 teams I covered, the Bills actually have dual threat capabilities and can do damage from the run and the pass, making this a deadly combo. The last little thing I want to hit is the fullbacks. Although this position is considered dead, I still like to give a small mention. I decided on Carlton Gilchrist or Cookie Gilchrist. The fullback only played for 3 seasons at Buffalo, but his best seasons were in Buffalo, so I'll count it here. He managed to rush for 1,000 yards during the early 60s, which is crazy. He's a big blocker and can be an amazing goal line option when needed to be. Up next are the wide receivers. There are a lot of great choices here, so I'm pretty excited to make my selections, and up first is Andre Reed at the number 1 spot. This one is probably the most obvious one here, and rightfully so. He is the all-time leading receiver in Buffalo Bills history up to this point, and it's not really close. The most touchdowns in franchise history, and again, it's not really close. He's also second in catches, with over 13,000 receiving yards, along with adding 7 Pro Bowls and part of the greatest no-huddle offense in NFL history, and is also in the Hall of Fame. It just makes sense to put him at the number 1 spot. The second receiving option, I will go with Eric Moulds. The 3-time Pro Bowler managed to get 10 good years for Buffalo and is first in all-time catches with the team, and second in all-time with both receiving yards and touchdowns as well. A good option at the second spot. The third option, I will actually make this interesting and go with someone no one would suspect, and some people, especially Bills fans, would probably not appreciate this selection that much just because how short his stint with the team has lasted up to this point, but I decided to go with Stefon Diggs. Alright, so the ones that are a little taken aback by this selection, this one is what I consider a wild card pick. I'm not 100% sure if Diggs will play a good portion of his career at Buffalo, as no one really knows, but as far as of right now, he is doing amazing in Buffalo, as he received his first Pro Bowl and All-Pro selection in just his first year with the team, along with having his best season yet with over 1,500 yards receiving. He is on pace to get another 1,000 yards. I know this is a gamble, but I do believe that Stefon Diggs, bearing in mind if he stays healthy and has no future contract disputes, I believe he will be one of Buffalo's finest. And in the future, if I happen to be wrong, well then, I have been wrong before, and you all have made that very clear. Fourth option will go to Lee Evans. Evans was a solid receiver for the Bills from 2004 to 2010, having 2 really good seasons and having a mid-50s catch rate. He was not known to be the best receiver during that time, but he was trustworthy and reliable. Fifth receiver I picked was James Lofton. Okay, so many of us know that James Lofton as a Packer, as he spent 9 seasons with the team. However, he also spent 4 years with the Bills during the early 80s and managed to get a Pro Bowl selection along with a 1,000 yard season with it, so he still had some juice left during that stage of his career. He did not spend most of his career with the team, so because of that, I made him at 5th spot, and not even a real starter, so I think I was able to achieve the best of both worlds. And the last spot is Frank Lewis. Lewis also spent 7 years with the Steelers before having a career revival with the Bills, and played there for 6 seasons and managed to get his Pro Bowl selection when he was with the Bills, and his best seasons happened there as well. Lewis was a very talented receiver and would have been a great fit on this team. Okay, so now that all the receivers right here, overall this receiving core is pretty solid. A lot of versatility with Diggs, Lofton, and Moulds, and Andre Reed can basically do anything, so we got tall slot Lewis and Evans playing backside. I would not say this core would be as deep as the Bengals receiving core like I covered in the last team, but you can do a lot with this, and Jim Kelly has a lot of options with this core. However, one big weakness is the team would be probably speed. Diggs and Reed are pretty quick, but with Lofton being in his 30s at this point and Lewis being 34 years of age, you don't really have a lot of deep threat options for receivers or receivers playing outside as much, but you do have security. Now, with that being said, let's move on to the tight ends. Tight ends are considered the security blanket for the quarterbacks, along with the outside blockers and red zone targets as well. Let's see what Buffalo has to offer with their selection of their historical tight ends. First spot will go to Ernie Warlick. Warlick is often forgotten to time, mostly because one, he only played for 4 seasons, not to mention the guy started playing in the NFL when he was 30 years old, and two, he played during the earlier years with the Bills during that early and mid 60s era. Despite this, he managed to not only help the Bills win 2 AFL championships, but also made a Pro Bowl selection in every single year he played, and averaged 20 yards per catch, which is insane for any kind of receiver really, including a tight end. But his career was short just because how late he played, but I don't see any other tight end in Buffalo's history that can match up to Warlick at this point, or even be as accomplished as he was for the short time he played. The second tight end spot I gave to Paul Costa. Costa actually played his first year during the 1965 season, which happens to be the last year with Ernie Warlick at the tight end spot, so it was almost like he passing of the torch for a little bit. Once Costa won the first spot over Warlick, but it did not really matter. The Bills were using this new 2 tight end system and allowed both of them to flourish and end up being the Chargers in the 1965 AFL Championship game. Costa, despite playing so well, was only a tight end for the Bills for 4 seasons before switching to the right tackle for the remainder of his career and never switched back. He's a 2-time All-Pro and a 1-time AFL champion. Okay, so these are the 2 tight ends I decided to go with. I believe as of right now, these 2 tight ends I feel are the Bills' finest, but I would say this is a little lacking compared to the rest of the offense at this point. For this lineup, I would make Warlick the catching tight end, and I'd make Costa the blocking and the red zone target due to his height being 6'6". A weakness of this part of the team would be, like mentioned earlier for the receivers, would be speed, but catching and blocking would be a big strength for this part as well. But let's move on to the last part of the offense, and that is the offensive line. Alright, so for the first spot on the offensive line, the left tackle is Will Warford. Warford spent 7 out of his 13-year-long career with the Buffalo Bills. During his 7 years, he managed to get 2 Pro Bowl selections and was part of the 90s Bills Super Bowl no-huddle offense during the 1990s. Clocking in at 6'5" and weighing around roughly 300 pounds, he rarely missed a large amount of game time from injury and played and stood his ground against some of the NFL's finest pass rushers. Moving to the inside of the line at the left guard spot is Billy Shaw. Shaw was part of the early success of the Bills during the 1960s, managing to get a Pro Bowl selection in 8 out of the 9 seasons he played in Buffalo. Not to mention he earned 5 consecutive All-Pro selections as well, making him a very obvious choice for this team. Did I also mention he's in the Hall of Fame? Moving more inward to the center position, I went with Kent Hull. Hull played for 11 seasons for the Bills and was one of Jim Kelly's best linemen. He was a team captain and was a former USFL player who became a 3-time Pro Bowler and a 2-time All-Pro, and again was part of the 4-time AFC Championship teams during the early 90s. Over on the right guard spot, I picked Joe DeLamielleure. This one was actually pretty obvious. I mean, the guy was a 6-time consecutive Pro Bowler and a 3-time consecutive All-Pro, and was an amazing run blocker for a period when running the ball was the norm in the NFL. Finally, at the right tackle spot, I will go with Stu Barber, who I believe should be in the Hall of Fame, and he will probably get there soon enough, I think. But apart from his first and last seasons, he did not miss any games. He also played linebacker first season in the league, so he also has a little bit of speed on him as well. As far as backups go, I'm going with 3 backups because I mean like 5 is pretty unnecessary. So for the backups, I picked Reuben Brown, who earned 8 Pro Bowls with the team, Jim Richard, who is the 2nd most in games played in Bills history, and finally Al B. Miller, who was just as good as Stu Barber and Billy Shaw for the most part. And now here we are with the line. line, which I believe this is the best part of the offense. With multiple Hall of Famers and future Hall of Famers on this line, there are not a lot of all-time teams that have this level all across the line like this team does. Even the backups are pretty impressive and versatile. And here we are with the entire offense. Overall, the strongest parts of this team is definitely the running backs, the quarterbacks, and the offensive line. I mean, honestly, even the receivers are pretty deep as well. My only problem with this offense is the tight ends. I'm not really massively impressed by these guys a whole lot, but this team will have a dominant run game and a great passing game. I would say a weakness would be anywhere in the red zone and a lack of a true vertical threat. But overall, this is probably one of the most well-rounded teams I've made up to this point and matches the Bears theme team and run game and beats out the previously mentioned theme teams in receiving cores and offensive lines. However, this is just only half of the team. There's still a defense to form and the Bills has some diamond pieces, so let's get started with the defensive line. For the right end spot, I went with Bruce Smith. I mean, this was probably the most obvious pick for this entire defense here. I mean, the guy has the most sacks in NFL history, an 11-time Pro Bowler, 8-time All-Pro, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, played 19 seasons in the league on defense, and was on 2 all-decade teams, and of course is in the Hall of Fame. This one was a no-brainer, so we can just go ahead and move on. Moving inwards to the first defensive tackle spot, I'll go with Tom Seastack. Although not playing for a very long time, he provided a major pass rushing ability for the Bills during the 1960s, being their most dominant pass rusher along with an amazing run stopper, which helped the Bills win 2 AFL championships during his tenure there. Although sacks were not officially tracked during the 1960s, it is estimated that he gained 52 sacks over his 8-year career, which is actually insane. To paint like a better picture on how impressive this is, Seastack played in a total of 96 games and got 52 sacks in those games, which means if we happen to divide these numbers, you get 1.8, which means he almost averaged 2 sacks a game during his career with the Bills. On top of that, the game back then was less passing and more running. Like, are you kidding? This is insane. I would say he is the best pass rusher on this team, but you know, his best season was back in 1964 where he managed to get 15.5 sacks in 14 games. The man is a 4-time consecutive Pro Bowler and a 3-time consecutive All-Pro player and should definitely be in the Hall of Fame within the next few years or so. Hopefully. Next up is the second spot, and that will go to Kyle Williams. Kyle Williams was a pretty under the radar sort of blue collar defensive tackle for the Bills for 13 seasons. He earned 6 Pro Bowl selections. I wouldn't say he was the best pass rusher in the league or he stood out at all, which was the main reason why he was overshadowed most of his career, but he was really good and was a shining part of a very dull thing we call the mid 2010 Bills. For the backup, I chose Fred Smirlis. Smirlis was a nose tackle for the Bills for 11 seasons, a 5-time Pro Bowl and a 1-time All-Pro player. He'll provide a great option for goal line scenarios or third down options as well. Okay, so far we have some great pass rushers and run stoppers in the middle. So who will finish off these other 3? Finally, for the left end spot, I will go with the Dancing Bear. No, not an actual bear, what the fuck, but Ron McDowell. McDowell played 8 seasons for the Buffalo Bills from 1962 to 1968 and spent another half of his career playing for Washington. McDowell had his best career years with the Bills, so I'll count it. McDowell was a 2-time Pro Bowl and a 1-time All-Pro. Although he can pass rush, he has shown that ability. His claim to fame was definitely his run-stopping ability. His biggest feat being, with the help of his other defensive linemen, managed to not allow a single rushing touchdown for 17 straight games during the 1964 and a little bit of the 1965 seasons. And this was during the 1960s, where running the ball was the main attraction for most NFL teams. That's pure amazing. And for the backup defensive ends, I picked Aaron Schobel and Phil Hansen. Alright, here is the defensive line. Overall, we have some amazing pieces here. I would say this defensive line is able to both pass rush with Smith and Seastack and Smith. Kyle Williams can also provide pressure when rushing forward, and when you also have McDowell and Smirlis providing amazing run support and stuffing the middle. Although there is only one Hall of Famer on this line as of this recording, there is a lot of versatility like with most of this team. Alright, now on to the linebacking core, and we will go from left to right. So with the starting right outside linebacker, it will go to Mike Stratton. Stratton was a defensive anchor for the mid-60s Bills, who managed to win back-to-back championships with the team. He was most well known for the play during the 1964 AFL Championship game against the Chargers, known as the hit heard around the world. Good lord. Where he laid a vicious hit on Chargers running back Keith Lincoln after he scored the first touchdown of the game, and after that hit, the Chargers were completely shut out, only scoring 7 points. yards. Stratton is a 6-time consecutive Pro Bowler and a 3-time consecutive All-Pro selections and was part of the all-time AFL team. Stratton was considered one of the finest defensive players during his era. This was also one of the easiest selections to make for this team. Stratton unfortunately passed away in March of 2020. Stratton is most definitely a Hall of Famer, however he has not been inducted yet. Hopefully he does become a Hall of Famer in the near future, but that might be unlikely. So moving inwards to the middle linebacker is Shane Conlan. Shane Conlan played 6 seasons with the Buffalo Bills and earned 3 Pro Bowl selections. He was part of the 4 back-to-back Super Bowl Bills teams in the 90s. He racked up over 550 combined tackles with his time with the Bills and earned 3 consecutive Pro Bowl selections and was the 1987 Defensive Rookie of the Year. Moving over to the left side, I picked Cornelius Bennett. Cornelius Bennett is what I consider the best left outside linebacker in Buffalo. He was an amazing pass rusher, was sort of that linebacker that would pass rush someone like a TJ Watt or Lawrence Taylor. Bennett was a 5-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro, and was a second team for the 90s All-Decade team. He amassed 71.5 sacks and over 1,000 combined tackles and 31 forced fumbles. Bennett is another future Hall of Famer that might get in with a little more time, but I'm not sure yet. Too bad he went to 5 Super Bowls and lost every single one. For backup, I picked Darryl Talley, a 2-time Pro Bowler who amassed over 1,200 tackles and almost 40 total sacks. Alright, so looking at the linebacking core, this is an overall great linebacking core, with 2 future Hall of Famers to back up this defensive lineup, with Cornelius Bennett providing extra pass rush, Shane Conlan and Darryl Talley for extra mid-zone coverage, and Stratton being the overall enforcer of the team. This will work amazingly against the run and the pass. Okay, so we are nearing the end here of the segment and has been pretty long already. So the second last position group to cover are the cornerbacks. There was a lot of great picks for this position group, so let's begin with the starting corner on the team, and I selected Butch Bird. Bird was a 5-time Pro Bowler and a 3-time All-Pro. He won 2 AFL titles back in 64 and 65. He earned 40 interceptions during his 7-year career with the Bills. As of right now, he holds the franchise record for the most career interceptions and interception return yards. He was also a punt returner as well, so he was also quick and agile, which with his size being 6 foot and a little over 200 pounds, this would be the perfect mold for a corner guarding the best receivers. The second cornerback spot will go to Robert James. Robert James was an outstanding coverage corner for the Bills during the little dark blip being the late 60s Buffalo Bills. He was extremely fast and always shadowing the best receiver on the opposite team. What made him brilliant was the use of his hands when stuffing receivers in the line. His coverage was known to be almost mirror-like and was on the level of the best in the league during his time, on the levels with like Willie Brown and Mel Renfro, who were both playing at the time. He started reaching his prime during the early 70s, reaching consecutive Pro Bowls from 1972 to 1974. Along with these 3 Pro Bowls, he also has 2 All-Pro selections as well. Unfortunately, his career was cut short due to a knee injury during a 1975 preseason game. James's career is a pretty big what if, but I had no doubt he would have been a Hall of Fame player if it wasn't for that injury. Moving on to the slot corners, or the corner number 3, I picked Tre'Davious White. Okay, so now I already know you all who know who Tre'Davious White is that he's one of the best corners in the game right now. I don't really see a decline from him anytime soon. Sure, he might be a little slower due to his recent injury, but he will return to All-Pro formats soon enough. If he happens to keep playing even remotely at this level like this 2019 and the 2020 seasons, then I see him as the best corner for the Bills of all time. At the 4th slot, or the 2nd slot spot, I picked Nate Odoms. A 2-time Pro Bowler for the Bills during the 90s, he was a real corner for the team and was even the interception leader in 1993 with 9 interceptions. He later slowed down soon after he left the team in 1994 with knee problems and eventually retired soon after. He was involved with the 90s success for the Bills when they made it to, again, 4 back-to-back Super Bowls and played 7 seasons with the team. The final corner spot will go to Stephon Gilmore. Okay, so this one's pretty weird considering that his best years were in New England. However, he did earn a Pro Bowl with his time in Buffalo, and he was still a top corner with the Bills, so I will count it. And he would just be a backup on this team, so anyways, I feel like he was able to hit the best of both worlds here. Alright, so here are the cornerbacks, and this looks amazing now when I'm looking at it from afar. This team is strong all around. We have some lockdown options, run support options, and pure zone as well. This front can literally do everything. We also have some amazing speed with Butch Bird and Robert James playing the 1 and the 2. Honestly, if I want to, I can interchange the top 3 as Bird, James, and White can easily easily play the 1 or the 2. That's how deep this unit is, and a great part of the secondary supporting the strong defensive line and linebacker unit. But we are not done, as there's still one more position group left, and that's the safeties, so let's cover that. The starting free safety spot will go to George Symes. Symes played in Buffalo for 7 seasons with the team and earned 5 Pro Bowl selections and 3 All-Pro selections, and was part of the 1964 to 1965 back-to-back AFL championship teams. He was a hard-hitting run support safety who also had some solid coverage defense as well. Symes is definitely a future Hall of Famer and should be inducted in the near future, but considering that many people on this team have not been in the Hall of Fame after all this time, well, I'm not so sure anymore. The starting strong safety I picked decided to go with Henry Jones. Jones is a one-time Pro Bowl and a one-time All-Pro. He was a stout safety for the Bills for 10 seasons and had his best season in 1992, where he was the interception leader with 8 interceptions in 1 season, which was amazing. He is considered a Bills legend and was part of the 50th anniversary Bills team. I believe he was an amazing selection for this team. As far as backups go, I went with Tony Green and Micah Hyde. Micah Hyde actually played both free safety and strong safety and played at a Pro Bowl level and can provide great coverage when needed to be. As for Tony Green, he played 9 seasons for the team and played at not only a Pro Bowl level but also an All-Pro level as well. Alright, so here we are. The safeties are completed as well as the entire defense. This team actually looks excellent to say the least. Versatility is one word I would use to describe this defense. This defense is great against the run and the pass with many great pieces all around from the defensive line all the way up to the safeties. So let's get into the final leg and complete with the head coaches and the kickers and the punters and other special teams. The starting kicker for the team will be Steve Christie. Honestly, it was either him or Scott Norwood, but considering that A, he had a better field goal percentage, B, he had a better extra point percentage, and C, well, the play that shall not be named. The punter spot will go to Brian Mormon. He was an all-pro punter for the team, and as far as right now, he's the best punter, no question, in Buffalo Bills history. So this one was pretty obvious, so we can just go ahead and move on. The kick returner will be Terrence McGee. He played slot corner for the Bills during the early 2000s. He had major returns for the team, including multiple 100-plus yard kick returns. He also had 4 seasons with 1,000 or more return yards during his 6-year tenure with the team. Moving to the punt returner, I picked Keith Moody. He was more of a kick returner, but he was pretty good for punts as well. He has some noteworthy punt returns each year during his short stint for the team. For the head coach, I picked Marv Levy, who as of right now is the all-time winningest coach in franchise history, so there you go. For the uniforms, I chose the 60th anniversary uniforms for the home uniform, and for the away, I picked their 90s uniforms when they went to 4 straight back-to-back Super Bowls, which I believe it was the 93 uniforms, but I'm not 100% on that. Okay, everybody, we have made it to the end of the team. I mean, I like this team a lot more now than when I originally wrote every single name down before making this. You know, when putting this together, I found this to be a lot more impressive looking back at it. I mean, sure, the Bills don't exactly have the most flashy players like what the Bears had, but this team has efficiency on offense, and it does have pretty crazy versatility on defense. This team looks great and just has about every Bills legend all in one all-time team. Thank you all so much for watching. I know it has, kind of been a while, but thank you all for sticking with me. But what do you all think of this team? Did I happen to miss any players? If I did, then feel free to let me know, and I'll be sure to pin them down below. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Peace out and have a good day.